What's up everybody, man? Welcome to a brand new video, and today we are jumping into the final episode, at least for now. Obviously this is the last one, the final episode of Godzilla-Thon. Today we are jumping on into episode 41 of Godzilla-Thon for Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. Yeah, I totally forgot to mention this in the Godzilla vs. Kong review, but this is also doubling as episode 10 of Kong-a-thon. This is also going to be the episode 10 of Kong-a-thon. Obviously with King Kong vs. Godzilla, that was the first Godzilla Kong crossover, therefore that's the first episode I've covered twice on both Godzilla-thon and Kong-a-thon. The difference was many years had passed between me reviewing King Kong vs. Godzilla and then when I did it for Kong-a-thon. The other difference was when I reviewed King Kong vs. Godzilla for Godzilla-thon, I actually reviewed the English cut and I'd never seen the Japanese version. When I finally got around to the Japanese version, that's when I reviewed it for Kong-a-thon. There really only is one version of Godzilla Kong the New Empire that matters, and that's the English version. There is no Japanese cut, you know? There's not a drastically different version of this movie that exists, and so there's only one way to review this movie. And also just because I'm getting around to these reviews right now, while I could revisit these in years, if I'm gonna revisit these movies, Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla Kong the New Empire, I'll do them in an updated format, not in the Godzilla or Kong-a-thon format. So this is also doubling as episode 10 of Kong-a-thon. Just figured I'd mention that. Godzilla Kong the New Empire is the newest Godzilla movie as of right now. Although of course there is a Toho Godzilla movie on the way and the new Godzilla Kong Supernova coming up. But for now, Godzilla Kong the New Empire came out in 2024. It was released to celebrate the 70th anniversary of Godzilla officially. As the first repeat director of the MonsterVerse, Adam Wingard returned for Godzilla Kong the New Empire, bringing on his own writing team. That means that this is the first MonsterVerse movie without any involvement from Max Bornstein, the original writer of Godzilla 2014, who had been with all the MonsterVerse films and had written the first draft of all of them. This is the 5th MonsterVerse film as well as the 5th American Godzilla movie, and was the official start of Phase 2 of the MonsterVerse, at least the theatrical start of it, as Phase 2 technically begins with Skull Island and in the live action space Monarch Legacy of Monsters. This is the 38th Godzilla film overall and was released on March 29th, 2024, just 3 months after Godzilla Minus One's international release and 4 months after Godzilla Minus One, making it the fastest turnaround between live action Godzilla films, I believe. Of course, the only other time that could have happened to my knowledge is in 1964 with Mothra vs. Godzilla and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, but I'm pretty sure there was more than a 3-month or 4-month time gap between those. And I will say the proximity was felt pretty heavily. This was also only weeks after Godzilla Minus One won its March 10th Oscar, the very first Oscar ever given to a Godzilla film. Godzilla Minus One won that for VFX just weeks before Godzilla Kong the New Empire, and while it kind of could have been seen as like Godzilla's at the top of his game and everybody could celebrate Godzilla being back in such a big way, that really wasn't the case. We see a major divide in both the fan base and I would say general pop culture as to how people feel about Godzilla, and I feel like this movie and Minus One really exemplify that. Because of that, I'm really gonna not try and dwell on that at all. You know, it's a very discussed topic at this point, Godzilla Kong the New Empire versus Godzilla Minus One. People have gone in depth about the differences between those films. It's a very covered topic. I do not feel the need to cover it. It just doesn't feel very productive. They're very different movies. They're trying to accomplish very different things, and I feel like if you're going to compare GXK to anything, you should compare it to the MonsterVerse films that came before, whether Godzilla vs. Kong or other MonsterVerse movies. I'm gonna try and not draw too many comparisons here, and I'm also gonna try and not dwell on this movie as much. This might be a little bit of a weird approach for me, but I have a lot of criticism of Godzilla Kong the New Empire, so again, disclaimer for anybody who doesn't like to hear criticism of the Wingard films. I don't know why people are so oversensitive over the Wingard films in particular. Nobody has this kind of restraint over Godzilla 2014. If Godzilla 2014 gets a negative review, people move on. If Godzilla 2014 gets a positive review, people move on, you know? I do not know why people have to be babied when it comes to the newer MonsterVerse films, but it really does feel like it's such a toxic online culture that, yeah, I'm just gonna give another disclaimer. If you do not like criticism of these movies, maybe bounce on this one. But I will say, I'm gonna try and not dwell on my criticism on this movie as much as I did with my Godzilla vs. Kong review for 2 reasons. Number one, I have gone in depth over the last couple years about all of the issues I have with Godzilla Kong the New Empire. I have already covered in separate videos all of my thoughts on some of the shortcomings of this movie. I've already gone into it. I'm not all negative, by the way. I have also gone into all of the things that I like about this movie in other videos. This is the most recent Godzilla movie, and so therefore I have a lot of recent coverage of it, like recent as of the past couple years. This movie came out the start of 2024. We're a little over a year later, so, you know, it's not like it's territory that I haven't covered in the past year or so. I have discussed New Empire at length, and I do not want to sit here and dwell on criticism of the movie that I have already exhausted. The other reason is because a lot of the issues I have with this movie is the same issues I have with Godzilla vs. Kong. So I've already, I feel like, made my point in the GVK review. I've gone really in depth with my issues on GVK, and those issues are mostly present here. So yes, I will still acknowledge some of the issues I have with this movie, which is just, by the way, what a crazy scenario that I have to put this disclaimer up front. I just shouldn't have to. Again, with Godzilla 2014, I would have never had to. Although that was a movie I gave an overwhelmingly positive review. I'm just saying, I've never felt the need to be protective over myself, over my opinion on a Godzilla movie before, as I am with these Wingard films. It's really weird. I can only imagine how poor Adam Wingard feels. I feel so sympathetic for him. Like, the fact that he's gotten so many death threats that the dude's off the internet from this fan base, I just can't wrap my head around where the current status of this fan base is. And I'll be honest, I feel like the double whammy of GVK and GXK has put me in a weird spot where I'm also feeling really disillusioned with the fan base. Like, it's bizarre that I even have to make this big of a deal over the fact that I have criticism of a movie. Remember back in the day when people used to get so excited when I would have criticism of these movies? There was a time when I would give, you know, Godzilla vs. Megalon a negative review, and people loved that I was being negative. Like, they loved that I was able to share my criticism. They found it entertaining, even if they disagreed, and many people did. People love Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. I gave it a negative review. Not a review I would really stand by anymore. I really like that movie. Now, I don't love it, but I like it a lot nowadays. So my opinion has very much changed, but man, I did not need to be so overprotective over my opinion on Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. For some reason, this movie has created such a toxic culture. It's really rough. Maybe it's just the internet changing, you know? I've heard some horror stories of people receiving some really negative feedback or really exaggerated responses to their criticism of some of the original Godzilla films as well. So I don't know. Maybe it's just shifting tides, and maybe I just can't sail as well as I used to. I don't know. But what I do know is I'm going to jump into this movie and I'm going to get things rolling here. Godzilla Kong the New Empire is set 3 years after Godzilla vs. Kong. It takes place in 2027, although they actually don't state that in the movie. But we pick up with Kong. Kong is in Hollow Earth, and he leads a pack of wart dogs, which are like these weird monster dogs with nasty little faces. They don't look monstrous enough for me, actually. I would have liked them to be a little more monstrous, but I kind of appreciate that Hollow Earth is filling out its ecosystem so much to the point where, like, we can get all these packs of animals. I really like that. One thing this movie does a fantastic job with is filling out the ecosystem of Hollow Earth and populating it. It feels like a barren wasteland in Godzilla vs. Kong, and I gotta say, right up at the top, holy crap, have they improved the Hollow Earth. In Godzilla vs. Kong, it's kind of a drab place, and I never realized that. I used to think it looked lush and awesome and like really vibrant, and now New Empire puts in perspective. If you go back and actually watch Godzilla vs. Kong, a lot of the Hollow Earth scenes are very barren. They're very empty, and they're very kind of dull. It would be boring to spend a whole movie here. And that's just because the Hollow Earth has different realms and environments, you know, so like not everywhere is going to look the same. But what I really appreciate is that this movie has Kong in environments that are so vibrant and lush. It's so pretty. I really love it. And I love the use of the animals in the Hollow Earth. Like, they really populate it with monsters. And I like that they're allowed to act like animals in a lot of these scenes. This beginning with the wart dogs, I'm not the biggest fan of the design of the wart dogs, but I like the idea of them. You know, I think they are a little too normal in a way. They don't look extravagant in a way that I would like the Titans of the MonsterVerse to look, or the Kaiju, you know, because I guess technically these are not Titans, but they're the monsters in the MonsterVerse. Not all of the monsters in this movie look all that awesome. Like, the Warbats were so special, and the wart dogs don't have that kind of epic factor to them, you know? They look a little too like Human World, if that makes sense. But they are really cool in a conceptual standpoint. I like the idea of like giant monster wolves. It's pretty neat. So Kong leads a pack of these guys to this log trap which he set. I also love that. Really cool way to establish right off the bat how smart Kong is. And this is the type of stuff I was talking about in the last video, or the Godzilla vs. Kong review, I should say. In the Godzilla vs. Kong review, I was really harping on playing to the strengths and weaknesses of these characters, and Kong's strength is his speed, it's his agility, and most of all, it's his intelligence. The guy's got strategy, he's got cunning, he can do things like set a trap, and I love that right off the bat, we're playing up Kong's intelligence. The trap he sets is awesome. It's a little weird on like, how did he do that? How did he dig out all that ground and set those spikes down there without tools? I don't know. But either way, Kong sets up this awesome little log trap where he kills one of the dogs. He then picks it up and he tears it in half, getting himself covered in its green blood. This is one of those instances where like people always say like Godzilla Kong the New Empire isn't a kid's movie, because as I've brought up many times, it's a fantastic kid's movie. And I think even the director Adam Wingard would agree that this movie's mostly made for the younger market. You know, this movie's meant to appeal to essentially kids in the 1980s, which is what he was in the 1980s. It was a movie that he has said on record many times is supposed to feel like a toy commercial or like walking into the toy shelves of the 1980s. A lot of this movie gives the vibe of like Transformers, the movie, the animated one, where it's like got ridiculous needle drops and explosions every second and things are going crazy all of the time, you know? That's the vibe this movie's got. And I think it's a kind of a disservice to not give it credit for how successfully it pulls all of that off. But anyways, a lot of people point to moments like this where Kong tears that warthog and have to be like, no, this can't be a kid's movie. It's got blood in it. As if the Gamera movies aren't also kids movies with tons of kaiju blood and gore in them. And just like with the Gamera movies where they often had purple blood, it's green blood, despite the fact that those darn warthogs have literal blood on their faces. You can see the red blood in the cuts on their faces. And yet for some reason he bleeds green. I bring that up just because it stuck out to me immediately, where it was bizarre that the blood was green considering that the cuts on their faces have red blood. It makes absolutely no sense other than to censor the scene so that little kids wouldn't be traumatized. But I have such a strong association with this scene because the first time I watched it in a movie theater, this little kid just started screaming when Kong tore the warthog in half. Like, they're so sad. They're screaming like, no, not the dog, you know. The kid enjoyed the rest of the movie, but man, that was just such a funny way to start out with like this kid getting absolutely traumatized. Like I said, they did really enjoy the movie. They were locked in and had a good time for the rest of it, but it was just such a funny way to start the movie. And I think Adam Wingard does a very good job pushing the boundaries in terms of kind of what he can show in these movies while still keeping them kid friendly. Obviously, this is a kind of a far cry from even the Skullcrawler Disembowelment, who also really had a lot of like very greenish blood, which kind of helps to sell it to younger audiences and make it a little more mainstream and safe. But I would say that is one of my strongest memories of this movie, and one of the things that like I remember the most from the theater when watching this film was that little moment where the kid freaked out. And this is not a movie I've seen a lot. I saw it 3 times in theaters, which is the least I've seen a Godzilla film in theaters since 2014. That is the least I've seen a Godzilla film in theaters, especially since I've been able to drive. I didn't have as much desire to rewatch this movie as others, and then it came out. I think I watched it once when it came out on the digital release. I got the 4K in the MonsterVerse 4K collection, and I don't think I watched it until just for this viewing, although I have watched it on HBO Max twice since then. So in total, I think I've seen this movie 7 times, which is more than most people have seen a lot of these movies. You know, most people only watch these films once or twice. 7 times quite a lot, but for me, 7 times is like the amount that I should have seen it in theaters before it left, let alone the home media release. A year out after the home media release, I have not seen this movie as many times as I have seen other Godzilla movies, and I've not paid as much attention to it on some of the home release watches. Like, I would say 3 of the times I've watched it at home, I barely paid any attention. So this was the first time I was really locked in since around when it came out. Kong's all grossed off by the blood and he showers it off. We're kind of recapping some of the beats of GVK here. This movie does a lot of that where like we recap some of the same beats of Godzilla vs. Kong, starting out somewhere on Skull Island with that Bobby Vinton song. Here we're picking up somewhere in Hollow Earth with Welcome to My World, you know. Kong's going about his morning routine just like in GVK, including with a shower. So we do recap some beats here, but to a very successful degree. We do the same at the end of the movie as well, but to a very successful degree. I think it works very well here. Kong then takes his food to a mountain. He lives in a mountain cave now, and poor guy's got a little toothache. He tries to eat, but boy, his tooth is killing him. The little guy Doug appears and tries to steal his food, and Kong and him get into a little fight over it. I'm glad they don't overplay Doug. It's just this brief little cameo, and then Doug scurries off with Kong's food because they're both caught off guard by another Kong distantly roaring, meaning Kong might not be alone in Hollow Earth, and he immediately sets out in search of it. I love that. I love that we're playing up Kong's storyline. I love love that we're continuing where we left off with Kong being lonely and wanting more of his kind. I love how, like, it's just this immediate thing where he's like, I gotta drop what I'm doing and head out after that. That's fantastic. And it's all done without a single line of dialogue. We immediately establish where Kong's at in the world and what his conflict is. It's great. It's fantastic nonverbal storytelling. Kong swings around Hollow Earth. I really like that scene of him swinging. I like the music that's playing here. It's that Kong-Gia theme coming back in. It's pretty sick. And then he finds out it's made by a parrot frog. It's a parrot frog echoing his roar that it heard earlier. This is a pretty cool little monster as well. I like that guy. He's neat looking. Kong gets all depressed and lonely and slumps down. This is the last time I'll mention it for the review, unless it, like, we go to a new biome and it really sticks out. But again, I just want to mention Hollow Earth looks fantastic in this movie. It looks really good. But I'm not a big fan of some of these VFX. I'm gonna get this out of the way right now so I don't have to bring it up throughout the review, but sometimes in this movie the VFX are truly astounding, and I will bring it back up later when I think that they really kick it into high gear. Other times I think the VFX are distracting is what I would say. Like, they're not selling me. Something about them's off. A lot of the time what it is the character animations themselves. I find them to sometimes the characters, whether it's Kong or whoever, in particular, obviously throughout this opening scene, it's Kong, they move really stiff and clunky. Like, they literally move like keyframes, you know, and I know they're keyframe animated, but they move in ways that feel really stiff. Also, I've brought this up in other videos, but sometimes the eyes are really glossy and kind of distracting, and they break my immersion. The other thing that I want to get out of the way right now, and I just do not want to harp on it, I've made my point in other videos, the scale and gravity in this movie I think is downright terrible. It's to the point where I'm not even sure why we're watching a Godzilla movie. There are times, big stretches of this movie, where the monsters could be 6 feet tall, and that completely breaks the purpose of them being giant monsters. The whole thing that made Godzilla interesting in the first place was his enormous scale. King Kong was sold on the grounds of his unfathomable scale. In 1933, the thing that made that character pop on the screen was how enormous he was and how hard that was for people to fathom back then. And that magic is completely lost by saying, who cares, let's put the camera at the Titan's perspective and let's have them move at speeds that are, you know, that are more human. The reason being, we're in Hollow Earth and therefore we should be at the Titan's perspective and moving at the Titan's scale. Except that is an excuse that was given to us. That's not true. And you can read the VFX articles breaking down the making of this movie, as I haven't covered in videos, because it's the same thing in Rio. They are moving at speeds that are unfathomably fast. It's there so that it's dynamic. The real reason the monsters move so quick in this movie is so that the fight scenes are more dynamic and so that they don't come across as boring when we're stuck with the monsters for long stretches of time. But in doing so, we strip the monsters of being monsters and we make them feel smaller than ever, and we kind of lose a lot of the special quality that makes kaiju so grand in the first place. I love their scale. So I just want to get that out of the way. Another big issue I have is the scale and gravity of this movie, and I do not think I'll need to harp on it for a lot of the rest of this review. So I just wanted to say that up top. Also, another thing while I'm adding on, I'm not a big fan of Kong's design here. I think some improvements have been made. I love how much more muscular he is here than in Godzilla vs. Kong. Kong looks a lot stronger here. He looks a lot more capable here. I talked about at length in my Godzilla vs. Kong review how bizarre of a choice it was to basically make Kong over the hill by the time that movie starts. He's out of shape. He's like a gunslinger without a fight. He's kind of past his prime. I appreciate here that Kong feels like he's back in his prime. It's very cool. What I don't love is the stockiness of him. He's got really broad shoulders now. His fur's a lot longer now and it makes him feel stumpy. Kong feels very stumpy. His head also feels really large. Like, there are times where it comes across cartoonishly large in this movie. A lot of that's helped by the obnoxiously wide camera angles they've picked, almost fish-eyed lenses at times, and I do think it amplifies some of the weird design traits. And then I'm just not a fan of making Kong gray. I don't understand it. Like, why are we making him feel like an old man? I just can't take it. Kong's not an old man. In this movie, we meet Skar King, who's thousands of years old. How is Kong, who's like maybe 200, if that, how is he considered an old man? Gets even weirder when we meet Suko, but again, I don't want to harp on this stuff too much. I just wanted to say at the top, this is a step back for me. There are things that I really like about this Kong design. I love the face of this Kong design. I love the maturity of the design. I love not the grayness and the age of him, but there's a real maturity to this design. And I really like the musculature. I love how strong he is. I love that they've made him a little bigger since the last movie, like literally taller, and he's just got a lot more bulky muscles. The shoulders could be toned down a bit. The head could be, I don't know, separated from the body further with maybe a longer neck would help. I'm not too sure. Sometimes it's not an issue. A lot of the time, as I've talked about in other videos, I think it's because when they switch VFX studios, Kong literally looks ever so slightly different. In some studios, I don't think he translates as well. Weta is the studio where he looks the best, as seen in his epic scenes with Skar King later on. But sometimes he looks a little awkward, I will say. I just wanted to get that out of the way, and now I'm going to move on. It's just a step back from Godzilla vs. Kong. Ilene becomes a public speaker, we find out. She's now a lead Monarch rep, and she's kind of working her way up, you know? She was already the head of Kong Division in the last movie, but now she's got a lot more sway at Monarch. She reminds us of where we're at with the MonsterVerse, where we're at in the status quo. She reminds us of how lonely Kong is and how his species is a social species. It's not meant for isolation. Now that he's no longer on Skull Island and he's in this enormous habitat, it's amplifying his desire for family. We also are reminded that Kong's territory is Hollow Earth and Godzilla's is the surface. As long as they don't venture into each other's territories, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. Now, this is something I've, again, covered in my Godzilla vs. Kong review, so I'm just gonna say in brief, I don't love us walking back the Godzilla vs. Kong conflict. I think it's a real disservice to the movie Godzilla vs. Kong to just pick up in this one and say, they don't like each other again and they will fight if they're in each other's territory. I think it makes Godzilla in particular not very interesting. I think it makes him frustratingly stagnant. And it also does something that this movie does a couple times, which is kind of destroy the themes of previous movies. And it really solidifies that Godzilla vs. Kong does not have an overall theme. We also learn here in this opening sequence, there are now multiple dozens of Titans on the surface that Monarch has discovered. Like, there's tons of them now. It's no longer 17 and counting. There's multiple dozens of them, which is a cool idea. Godzilla supposedly has resumed his role as the protector of what? Of humanity? It seems, maybe, but he clearly later in the movie will destroy humans just on a whim, so I'm not sure what exactly he's the protector of. Is it nature's balance? I've brought up in other videos how Godzilla's direct actions in this movie continue to compromise nature's balance more than anything. Is it his ego? Maybe most of all. That seems to be yes, because Godzilla still does not have a solid characterization. Something that, again, other videos have covered to death. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I'll just say Godzilla is not characterized very well here. Godzilla bounces between a very Toho-styled characterization where they allow him to be a bit of the villain and also the more superhero type persona. This scene in particular, Godzilla is portrayed as his superhero type character. It's very out of place given how Godzilla acts in some of the other scenes in this movie. It's particularly out of place given how Godzilla acts in the last movie, and so I don't get it. I don't get it. But anyways, we meet Titan 24, which I was wondering about this. So we meet Titan 24, who is Scylla. Scylla's attacking Rome. It's actually a pretty awesome little destruction sequence up top here. I love the Scylla attack. This is actually one of my early pitches for Godzilla vs. Kong, that the movie would start out with Godzilla fighting another Muto, the female Muto who appears in King of the Monsters, or that he could start the movie fighting Scylla, kind of calling back to Gamera 3, where Gamera shows up fighting those Gauss at the start of the movie. There were 17 Titans and counting, and Scylla was part of that 17. I think this is just another bit of evidence to add to the whole idea that in the original versions of the script, and actually no one mentions the character's name on screen, the only time that we ever get a reference to who Godzilla is fighting in Rome in this movie is on Bernie Hayes' notebook, where he specifically writes that it's the Titan Charybdis. So originally Charybdis was going to be another member of Scylla's species, and that's who Godzilla was fighting in Rome here. And that was changed when they sold toys of the character and called it Scylla again, and then was specifically doubled down with in the comic books and the novelization where it's stated to be the Scylla from King of the Monsters. All that to say, Titan 24? No way, that's Scylla. Scylla would have been in the first 17. Or, as we'll talk about later, at least within the first 19 or so. So, I'm sticking to my guns here. This is Charybdis. Either way, Godzilla shows up and fights this monster. While I like the fight, it's very entertaining, it breaks the universe and continues my big issue with this movie. Everything in this movie happens just because the movie wants it to. Godzilla shows up and he literally fights like Super Mario. He sprints into action and does a Mario leap, uppercutting Scylla. He then grabs Scylla / Charybdis, swings her around, throws her into a building, and does this enormous Mario leap on top of her, and then does the kiss of death, killing her, either destroying Scylla or Charybdis or whatever you want to say. Let's just say Scylla so that you guys don't fight about it in the comments. Godzilla kills Scylla here using the kiss of death. I like this scene. I've brought this up in other videos as well. The kiss of death is cool to see brought back here. I wish it wasn't used again later in the movie, as it makes Godzilla feel particularly one note in that the only thing Godzilla does anymore is stomp a monster's chest and kiss of death it. I would have liked if it was maybe just this one callback right here with Scylla and then we didn't do it again later, but you know, he'll do it again in just a little bit. Either way, Godzilla breaks his own rules here. If Godzilla could fight like this the whole time, he would have fought King Ghidorah like this. In fact, he probably would have fought the Mutos like this, but the first appearance of Godzilla in his current form was Godzilla King of the Monsters, so he would have fought King Ghidorah using these moves. He would have sprinted like he does here. He would have been able to do the leaps he does here. He would have at least fought Mechagodzilla like this. He would have been able to fight Kong like this, but he's never been able to fight like this. All of a sudden, he whips this new power out of nowhere, the ability to have all this agility, and it downplays the evolution that happens with Godzilla evolved later. Like, these are moves that should have been saved for Godzilla's evolved state, but it doesn't matter. Because if you question anything in this movie, you're going to go down a rabbit hole of finding out that there is no answer. Things happen because they do. And that's my big issue. So that's why I'm bringing it up. Anyways, we pick up with Hollow Earth Station number 1 in the Hollow Earth, where they're listening to the radio. The radio is talking about how Monarch's under some public scrutiny right now, especially for their expensive and mysterious Project Powerhouse. Who knows what that is? We'll bring that up later. That's actually a pretty good little setup right there. We find out that the Wart Dog trap, the weight that happened when all the rocks fell on it, it's caused a sinkhole to open up, which reveals the Hollow Earth. Yeah, that's right. You thought Hollow Earth was crazy, that there's a giant planet underneath the planet? Well, guess what? If you look underneath that planet, which would actually be going back up towards the surface, you find second Hollow Earth, a second subterranean Hollow Earth. How that works, I don't know. How Apex didn't pick that up on their scans of the planet, I don't know. Again, you're not supposed to question anything in this movie. It's made for kids. Godzilla goes to sleep in the Roman Colosseum. It's very cute. Poor guy can't get radiation anymore because Cerzal blew up his house, and so this is as good of a home as any, I guess. I like the idea that Godzilla picks this as his home because he misses humanity, but again, his actions in this film in particular, and the last movie, do not portray that very well. Like, Godzilla's not looking out for coexistence here. He is a bad guy. He's still a bad guy towards humanity. He'll do whatever he wants to do, whenever he wants to do it, regardless of who gets hurt. Monarch preps an expedition into Hollow Earth following the strange readings. I don't know why they actually bring this up, considering later on they're going to have to re-prep this same expedition as if they haven't already brought it up. But they do. First of all, they bring it up right here that they're going to prep expedition into Hollow Earth following these strange readings that they get that look like little triangle pyramids, but it'll be brought back up in a little bit. Meanwhile, Gia struggles to fit into this massive Monarch school. I didn't realize this until watching the movie, but it's a really big school with hundreds of kids. Given that it's like on this tiny little island, it's this tiny little Monarch outpost on this island surrounding a Hollow Earth access point. So I wonder how many Monarch employees are actually stationed here. It must be a pretty big Monarch site. Gia has this vision in class of pyramids, temples, Godzilla energized, and these evil blue eyes, which at first you're supposed to think are going to be Skar King's, but they're actually Shimo's eyes. She winds up drawing dozens of these triple pyramid symbols all over her desk. Ilene shows up to get Gia, and we're reminded that she's the only living Iwi. Rest in peace, Skull Island. Again, this movie, like I said, it does little things like this, reminding us that all of the Iwi from Skull Island are dead, which does serve the plot of this movie, as Gia becomes the last of her kind here, which compels her to want to gravitate towards the Iwi and Hollow Earth, but it doubles down on disrespecting Skull Island. You know, Skull Island was destroyed unceremoniously, and all of the Iwi from Kong's Skull Island killed completely, basically without even mentioning Godzilla vs. Kong. We're just told this: Gia's the last of her kind. That's it. It's really unceremonious, and so we double down on that here, and we'll continue to undo some of the threads of Kong's Skull Island later on. I think it's funny that Gia has this little iPad with a live view of Kong. Like, is there a drone following Kong 24/7? How do they have that footage? That's such a Showa era thing to do, just have characters have footage of something they absolutely should not be able to see. What a silly little thing. I guess there's clearly a drone flying around with Kong and Hollow Earth. I wonder if it's always streaming or if they only get sometimes they get feed of him, if the drone is charged and it's actually buzzing around him, because we never see it on screen. But either way, it is an interesting idea that Gia would be so far removed from Kong and she would miss him so much much that she would basically become an iPad baby but only watch Kong. Then we cut to this unhinged Volkswagen ad mid-movie, this ridiculous product placement shot of this Volkswagen in this field with the green grass. Why is it parked on the grass like that? What an insane shot to include in this movie. But hey, get that bag, I suppose. By the way, this video is sponsored by no one. Ilene watches this documentary about the destruction of Skull Island, and we are told on screen that it was destroyed by shifting storm patterns. Rest in peace, Kingdom Kong. That storyline means nothing because the comics are not canon. This features what I believe might be a deleted scene of Godzilla vs. Kong showing footage of Kong and Gia. I think it's supposed to be them meeting in the storm because Kaylee Hoddle looks like she did when they filmed Godzilla vs. Kong. This is a great little moment. I love it. I love when we can flash back to the time period of another film and using CGI, you can bring to life the characters I've never seen before. And that's really cool, little uncelebrated moment. Pretty neat. Ilene realizes that Gia's drawings and the Hollow Earth movie sounds are actually the same pattern. Meanwhile, Hollow Earth baseball is destroyed as a mysterious alien. Such a little goofy moment that the eye comes down before they watch it. It's like a little gift. Yeah, the base is destroyed by the Skar King. Meanwhile, Gia has another vision of the three pyramids in Shimo's eyes. Ilene then goes to Miami to recruit Bernie Hayes for help. I don't know if that's actually where he lived in the last movie. I can't tell if this is supposed to be the same house. Kind of gives the vibe that it's supposed to be the same house he was in the last movie, but it does not look like the same location, so I'm going to say he moved. And Bernie is actually very reasonably frustrated with Monarch for denying or not backing up his claims that he helped take down Mechagodzilla. They did not corroborate any of his statements, and they've also completely abandoned him, despite the fact that he did play a crucial role in saving the planet. Again, was it all that crucial? No, it should have been written out of that movie, but they needed Team Godzilla to do something. What I'm really happy about here is that Bernie Hayes, Ilene Andrews, and Gia are returning from the last movie, and they're all wonderful. I never would have thought Bernie would have returned. To be honest with you, he is one of the characters that I think serves the least ability to continue moving forward. Just like how they didn't know what to do with Joe Brody, so they killed him off. Bernie Hayes is a character that I would have expected them to move away from following Godzilla vs. Kong, especially because some audiences responded fairly negative to Bernie Hayes, but man, do they do a wonderful job with this character in this movie. I am actually shocked to say, despite the fact that I'm not Bernie's biggest fan in the last film, just because of he's over the top, they've got some of those lines where I'm like, really, Bernie, with the fluoride in the water and whatever else, do they rein him in this movie? He is still over the top, but he's over the top in an energetic and excited way. He's not spouting conspiracy, he is spouting enthusiasm, and oh my god, does it do so much for this movie. Bernie brings in this life and fun to the movie and the human cast that I really appreciate. I'm so happy we have returning characters. I'm so happy there is a returning human continuity thread, and they do a really good job with these characters. They actually don't interact at all in Godzilla vs. Kong, which is really strange to think about in retrospect, considering they're like besties in this movie and they hang out the whole film. But yeah, they do not interact in Godzilla vs. Kong. This is the first time they've ever met. Bernie does agree to help Monarch as long as he can visit Hollow Earth, and Ilene's like, whatever, dude, you'll get whatever you want. We gotta go. And Bernie's all like, what's going on? And we find out it's because Godzilla's on the move. Monarch actually has the readings that Godzilla's on the move before he even wakes up, which means their biodata has gotten really advanced on him. Godzilla winds up waking up and walking out of Rome. He destroys this mural full of Easter eggs in the process. Like, it's full of world-breaking Easter eggs. They're all references for us, the fans. They don't make any sense in the context of this movie. I do love that little moment as Godzilla roars at the helicopter, telling it to get away from him because it's flying too close as he's walking out into the ocean, as he is responding to something unknown. The movie wants you to think that something unknown is a Hollow Earth portal opening up at the Monarch facility as Kong surfaces. Turns out that is not what Godzilla's looking for, and Kong's not here to pick a fight. Kong is here because of his toothache. I don't love this. I'm pretty sure Adam Wingard has talked about in interviews how the toothache is included in this movie because he had a chronic toothache while making Godzilla vs. Kong, and it was a kind of traumatic experience for him. I very much remember an interview where he talked about that, but I'll tell you why this is in the movie. They needed this in the movie for a couple reasons. Number one, they wanted this just brief moment of drama where Godzilla and Kong look like they're about to fight each other but don't, because they want to remind you, the audience, that if Kong comes to the surface, it's about to be go time, so that later in the movie, when Kong comes to the surface, Godzilla will go directly to fight him and we'll be on the same page. The other narrative purpose this serves is to establish the character of Trapper. Ghidorah, the Monarch veterinarian slash dentist who flies in with this enormous toolkit and replaces Kong's tooth. The reason they do this is to establish who Trapper is, what his personality is, show that he's not afraid of the Titans, and also to establish the fact that he is here to help. Monarch now has tools to help Titans out, and he's here to help. I don't know what other Titans he would possibly be doing veterinarian work on, but that is how this character should have been introduced. We should have seen a different Titan suffering some sort of injury. Maybe there's a smaller, younger Titan that wakes up and gets injured by military leaving a city and Trapper helps it with some burn wounds. Maybe a different Titan gets a toothache and Trapper helps out. They do this for Kong and it completely, in my opinion, officially kills off the intrigue and majesty that King Kong had after Kong Skull Island. The version of Kong that existed in Kong Skull Island is dead and gone. The new version is a soft, very easygoing man. It's a man. This is the actions of a human. Going to Monarch for help with his tooth. I don't need it. Kong doesn't need it. It makes him weaker than he needs to be. Kong doesn't need to have a silly little toothache. It just feels like it kind of demeans the character in a way. It makes me feel like Kong is less of a monster, definitely destroys the last vestiges of his godly personality. In a way, it makes Kong feel more helpless, I guess. I'm just not a fan. It's here to establish that Monarch's got a Titan dentist and that Trapper can help Kong so that later in the movie when Kong's injured and Trapper helps him out, we understand, oh, this is something Trapper can do. I think that it would have been more compelling if Trapper helped a different Titan, not Kong. Could have been Behemoth. Give Behemoth a toothache. I don't care. I don't want it to be Kong, and especially because the metal tooth looks stupid. I don't like it in his mouth. It's ridiculous. That's a big problem I have with Kong, is the clash between fantasy and technology. I don't need Kong to have a metal tooth. I definitely don't need him to have a robot glove. We're going like full Kong King of the Apes cartoon here. This is going full blown. Kong's got reflector gauntlets. He's got a jetpack. It's breaking what makes King Kong King Kong. This feels nothing like something that any Kong of the past would have ever done. He's becoming unrecognizable. And I would argue that if this happened to Godzilla and Godzilla needed a metal tooth because he had a toothache and he came to Monarch complaining, Godzilla fans would lose their mind. This would be one of their least favorite moments in the whole movie. They would not stop talking about it, the way that they can't even get over one gonorrhea joke in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Can you imagine the response if this was Godzilla showing up and complaining about his toothache? I do not think Godzilla fans would accept that. And if Godzilla got injured later on and needed a metal glove to help him out, like, oh my god, I remember the outrage when Godzilla vs. Kong was coming out and fans thought Godzilla was going to get injured and needed a Monarch basically backpack booster kit to get his dorsal fins working again. Holy moly, the fan base was in an uproar about how Godzilla doesn't need help like that. That completely takes away from his character. What is he, Mechagodzilla? He shouldn't need cybernetic enhancements. But alas, it happens to Kong. Anyways, I do actually really like that scene. The vibe of it is great. I love they're playing I Gotcha. Trapper's got a fantastic vibe. We immediately establish his very fun-loving, kind, very helpful personality. I love the characterization of Trapper. He's a guy who is, to his core, just a helpful, happy, friendly person. He's such a good dude, and I love it. I love the scene. From the standpoint of if I ignore who it's happening to, if I ignore that it's happening to Kong and that it's because of a stupid toothache, it's actually pretty cool. Like, I like Trapper. I like the technology. It's neat. We then get one of my favorite little moments in the movie. It's this very quiet little conversation at the beach with Trapper and Ilene. Beautiful scene, beautiful setting. It's just a great little moment. Their dialogue together is great. We learn that they have a history together. It seems they've dated in college. They know each other very well. I really like that moment. Bernie then shows up. He's dug into Monarch's files and he's discovered that this pattern that they keep detecting, it shows up throughout history. It's repeated a few times, all relating to massive Titan events. Don't read his notes, they're absolutely ridiculous, but they do include the absolute reference that it was Charybdis Godzilla fought in Rome, which is interesting. Apparently Godzilla's been picking up on these signals as well. They are like when King Ghidorah showed up, Godzilla got the distress call from Hollow Earth and knew what was going down. That's how Godzilla was ready to fight King Ghidorah. It's also apparently rang when Skull Island was discovered in 1973. 1983. I don't know what Godzilla thought was going on there, but he slept through that one. Bernie puts it simply, saying it is a distress call from Hollow-Earth of psychic energy. Somebody needs their help, so they're gonna go out and find them. With increased governmental pressure to kill the Titans, something this movie brings up but doesn't spend a lot of time on, but that I really appreciate, Monarch launches this emergency investigation into the distress signal before other people can pick up on it. This is a very ragtag team. Monarch's not really taking it all that seriously, considering they send Ilene, who recruits Trapper just because he's in the room with her, Mikhail, who's their pilot, he's the one who pilots the heaves, Gia, because she asks to tag along, saying they'll need her because she can also sense the signal, and because she could tell Kong what to do, even though she spends no time with Kong in this movie, and Bernie, who just gets to go because he wanted to. It's such a ragtag team, although I will say, really like all those characters. Great characters at hand here. They launch an upgraded heave into Hollow-Earth alongside Kong. Great little moment as Twilight Zone's playing and they jump into the portal. It's super awesome, and they blast off towards Outpost 1. Meanwhile, Kong heads home. Here's something I brought up when this movie came out, that I thought Kong runs really weird in this movie, and I finally figured out what it is, which maybe I've brought this up before. I used to think it's because I didn't love Kong running on 4 limbs, you know, like Kong runs like a gorilla here, like an ape, you know, where he's using his front limbs, whereas in Kong Skull Island they made a point that he runs like on 2 legs, makes him more godly, makes him less animalistic, makes him more mysterious and powerful. They did undo that in Godzilla vs. Kong, and yet it still kind of works in Godzilla vs. Kong, but here I finally figured it out. It's because Kong moves 1 limb at a time. It's a very weird animation choice. Kong puts 1 fist down, then the next fist, then 1 foot, then the next foot. So he's constantly moving almost like a spider, and it makes him weird. Because of that, I feel like he's crunching into himself in ways that makes him feel kind of short and stocky. Whereas in Godzilla vs. Kong, he had these enormous leaps and strides, 2 feet hitting the ground, followed with 2 fists hitting the ground, propelling him in a really rapid motion. I really prefer the strides he took in Godzilla vs. Kong. Such a minor detail, but it's little things like this that stick out to me. Anyways, the heave spots a flock of verticines. Love those little guys, little bird monsters flying around, and they camouflage to basically travel with them. That's a great little addition as well. They're like apparently electric monsters. They pack a lightning bolt's worth of electricity into themselves. Meanwhile, we get my favorite Godzilla scene in the movie. It's such a cool moment, but it's such a Toho Godzilla moment. Wow, does this feel out of place for the MonsterVerse Godzilla, but it is going back to 2015. I wanted this to be in a movie when I was still kind of on the idea that Godzilla should be a much more neutral force, and in some ways a much more villainous force in the MonsterVerse, as if he is the guardian of nature, he directly is not the guardian of mankind, because mankind falls into conflict with nature more often than anything, and as Godzilla 1984 would tell us, when mankind falls into conflict with nature, monsters are born. And you know what? Godzilla shows up here and he does what he should have been doing the whole time. He shows up in France and he is on the move. Monarch can't get very close to him because as they approach, his footsteps, for some reason, his giant footprints, very cool visual though, are producing so much ionizing radiation, meaning it's dangerous to be close to Godzilla. We find out it's because there's a nuclear power plant that Godzilla is attacking and he's breached the reactor core. Again, very Godzilla 84, very cool visuals, but I don't know why the footsteps would have ionizing radiation. Godzilla in the MonsterVerse is supposed to produce that very friendly, helpful, nature promoting, almost like fertilizing type of radiation, but whatever, move on. I love this scene where Godzilla attacks the reactor. The visuals are sick. I love that almost reverse atomic breath as Godzilla sucks in the atomic energy, draining the reactor core. So cool. A drone team then shows up retaliating, firing at Godzilla. He slaps him out of the sky. He's got the Toho roars going. It's such a cool moment. This also feels the most like something we'd see in Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I think that's because of the visuals, the color palette, the actual cinematography of it, the rain, the atmosphere. It feels very cool, very Godzilla. He feels bigger in this scene than he does for the rest of the movie. And Godzilla charges up until he releases an atomic pulse. It's pretty awesome. The music here is also my favorite iteration of the Godzilla theme for this movie, which is Junkie XL's returning Godzilla theme. After an update on Godzilla, the heave unfortunately loses signal to the surface. They then discover the remains of Outpost 1, and it features a giant red handprint from Skar King, calling back to Kong Skull Island. Meanwhile, Kong grabs his axe from his cave. I like that he's got it hidden, secured, very cool. And then he explores explores the uncovered cavern underneath the wart dog trap. It's such a cool moment. I love the way Kong like spelunks into the cave. I love the way the Godzilla axe charges up when it's near the crystals, like it's picking up their Hollow Earth energy. And I also love that by putting the axe near the crystals, it lights them like torches. What a cool idea. Holy crap, this scene is so cool. It's filled with what I call pure imagination, which is what this movie excels at. These very cool moments of pure imagination. Things that I could have never thought to do unless I was like a little kid playing with toys. That's what this movie excels at, and that's what it's made for. I love it. It's so beautiful. It's so visually intriguing. It's such a cool use of the axe. It's such a cool use of Kong's intelligence. It's very neat. Kong also discovers it's filled with the bones of other apes. It's like the first time he's seeing like remains of his people since his parents' bones on Skull Island. This movie starts cruising though because he immediately wanders into the subterranean realm, and within seconds, literally within seconds, he meets Suko, a tiny ape who's bigger than Kong was in Kong's Skull Island, although we never get a sense of that scale in this whole movie. We never get a true proper explanation of how big Suko is, but bigger than Kong was in Kong's Skull Island, I'll tell you. And their beautiful meeting with that like creation of Adam-style visual where Kong sets down the axe and reaches a finger out to Suko, and one of my favorite visuals in the movie is ruined as Suko immediately attacks Kong, biting his finger, and then Kong's jumped by these red stripe apes loyal to Skar King. They attack him and pin him down. One of them starts dragging this giant bone club over to club him on the head and kill him, while the other ones have stone knives. This is another one of those things where it's like, it's too human. I'm fine with the axe because it's like a bone mixed with Godzilla's spine, and therefore it feels kind of like, you know, something that these animals would make. I'm even fine with the spears later on. They've got really cool crystal spears, but I do not like the knives. They're too human. They're too human looking. Like, it's not one thing that they are kind of carved like a knife, like they're a dagger, but it's literally a knife. Like, it's got the handle, and I don't know. It's just too human. Then we get, I'm not going to harp on it. I'm actually going to just pick up the pace here because I don't want to be overly negative, but I really dislike this scene where Kong uses Suko as a weapon. Downright showing child abuse on screen, which I wouldn't harp on, you know? Like Son of Godzilla, I wasn't complaining that Godzilla was whacking Minya around with his tail. I found it entertaining, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a quick thrill for kids. But it kind of reminds me of some of my biggest gripes with Ben 10 Omniverse, a show that I love very dearly. But one of my biggest gripes with Ben 10 Omniverse is that it's a show with some of the best concepts in what I would say all of fiction. I freaking love some of the ideas that show presents, some of the storylines that we're introduced to there. Ben 10 Omniverse has some of the best ideas of the entire Ben 10 franchise, and yet one of the things that holds the show back and kind of keeps it from achieving the great status it deserves is that it's a show that will always take the joke. If there's a joke present, the show will go out of its way to chase it. And that compromises a lot of the tone of that show, a lot of the serious moments, and it kind of compromises some of the character beats sometimes. And that's how I feel here. Is it funny to see Kong using Suko as a weapon? Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's an over-the-top visual. It's very entertaining. It's very funny. But it completely flies in the face of Kong being a character who has spent his entire life so desperately lonely that he was willing to he didn't know what was going to happen if he fell into that portal in the last movie, but he threw himself into it even at risk of getting himself killed so that he could potentially find another member of his species. And yet when he finds a child of his species, someone he should be overly protective of, the first thing he does with it is use it as a weapon because it's attacking him. Kong should go out of his way to try and not hurt Suko. It also compromises the whole premise of this movie being Skar King as an abusive dictator, and in some ways an abusive father that Kong is the opposite of. Well, guess what? We see Kong on screen physically abuse Suko more than we ever see Skar King abuse Suko. Kong is portrayed on screen as hurting Suko more than the villain is. The whole point is that this villain has abused Suko so much that Kong needs to save Suko from this abusive father, and then Kong abuses the character on screen more. It's a cheap thrill that compromises the tone, the theme, and the characterization all at once. Not a fan. I love the moment where one of the apes chases down Kong. He attacks it, but then it almost falls off this cliff. Kong goes out of his way to save its life, catching it and helping it back up. And then that ape immediately betrays Kong by trying to stab him. So unfortunately, he Spartan kicks it to his death again. A character who spent his entire life so desperately lonely should not be so willing to kill. By him saving the ape's life was him fulfilling his characterization as previously established through the previous movies with him. Him immediately drop-kicking the thing to his death should have either traumatized him, like he should have shown some visible reaction where he was upset about that, which he doesn't, or I think more reasonably, Kong should have just found another way to knock the guy out. One Eye's the other ape there. He's the one that looks like an ogre. I like him a lot. He starts to get away, or he kind of looks like a troll, you know. Kong is not having that, so he picks up this rock and nails it far, like long distance, throws the rock, nails him in the head, knocks him over. But he does still escape. That's a very Showa era moment, kicking rocks at each other. I like it. Kong then finds Suko in a tree, sets him down, tries to give him the knife, but Suko doesn't want it, and then Suko leads Kong away, and Kong follows. Ilene recovers video of the attack on Outpost 1, discovering that it's from an ape. Meanwhile, another psychic signal hits, almost knocking the heave out of the sky, and Gia leads them straight to it. They touch down in what is kind of like a different realm, like they head down this enormous cavern, but I don't think it's technically a different realm of Hollow Earth. But it is a different area. I don't know. It could be a different realm. I don't know. They don't claim it as one. But they set out on foot for some reason. I do not know why they don't fly to their destination. Is it because they're worried of getting knocked out of the sky with another one of those signals? I don't know. The real reason is just so we can get the characters on the ground doing things, but they set out on the ground. Trapper leads the gang into the woods, but he stops them long enough because his senses are telling him something's off for this tree mimic to eat Mikhail, killing him. Oh my goodness! It would be shocking if we didn't predict Mikhail as such a predictable death. He's just such a nothing character. I kind of like him though, but he gets eaten by this tree mimic. It's a pretty shocking moment. Tree mimic is not one of my favorite monsters in the MonsterVerse, but it does kind of remind me of the tree killing them in Kong Skull Island, which turns out to be the Mother Longlegs. Not as shocking as that was though. Holy cow! Trapper then comforts Bernie. I really like the scene where they're comforting each other. That's a great scene. Meanwhile, Godzilla rampages through Spain, burning hot with radiation. Pretty sweet. They track his path and discover that he is heading into the ocean, and on the path to the Arctic, where Titan number 19 is sleeping. Now, I was wondering about this. This is Tiamat. Tiamat is considered the 19th Titan, and I was wondering if that's possible because there's only 17 Titans and counting in Godzilla King of the Monsters, but if there are 17 monsters, and then we add in the two Muto, and they're dead, but they still would be Titans in Monarch's database, that brings us up to 19? At one point, I think it was supposed to do with their age, you know. Ghidorah's Monster Zero because he's the oldest, but they don't stick to that, so I don't know. But I'm trying here, guys. I'm trying to find the threads. We get this cool little Tiamat recap / reveal, as this is the first time Tiamat's appeared on screen, and learn that she is extremely territorial and sleeping in a layer that is sitting in the direct path of electromagnetically charged solar winds, meaning it is the largest stockpile of energy on the planet. They realize that Godzilla's plan is to use it to supercharge. Gia finds the remains of an Iwi temple in Hollow Earth. Very cool. It's got great music. It features the Temple of the Moth carvings from Godzilla King of the Monsters. One thing I don't like is that it's the one from Godzilla King of the Monsters. This is again going with what I've been saying, destroying the themes of the past just cuz. Mothra's backstory in King of the Monsters had a rich history. Tying back into her original origins, she had the infant island backstory with generations of Shovijin who had a mythical connection to Mothra. The temple in China was supposed to be a nesting ground for Mothra where over centuries she has lived. It's one thing to say that there is a second Mothra in the Hollow Earth. That's one thing already. It's not set up or established at all in Godzilla King of the Monsters, but we can accept it as a new reveal. But to have the exact mural from Godzilla King of the Monsters repeated here, literally with the same cracks in it, like copy pasted from King of the Monsters, except here you can tell it's clearly CGI because it doesn't have the richness in texture that the one in Godzilla King of the Monsters did as a physical prop. Here it is a CGI wall. It's just like, what are we doing? Are we saying that the Iwi were responsible for the temple in China? How are we saying that these two separate cultures produce the exact same mural? It is just compromising for the sake of reusing an asset to make it easier for them. You don't need to do that. You later on show us a new Mothra cave art. You could have used that one here. I'm not a fan of that, and I don't care for the new Mothra lore, finding out that she apparently has always had a connection to the Iwi, and that she's got this Hollow Earth connection as well. We actually find out that the temple here Empire outdates the Iwi civilization on Skull Island. And again, this movie, it exists to destroy the themes of the past and the stories of the past in order to further its plot. The Iwi in Kong Skull Island very, very intentionally represented the core theme of the movie, being that humanity creates its own enemies. Sometimes an enemy doesn't exist until you go looking for one. Kong was not humanity's problem. He was not our enemy until the helicopters started dropping bombs, provoking him into war. It was an enormous commentary on the Vietnam War, how the Vietnamese were not the enemy of the United States until we decided they were. And it continues all throughout Kong Skull Island. All war. We're talking World War II to Vietnam War to whatever. It's constantly brought up in that film that we do not need to make our enemies. We make them because we as humans have massive egos that we cannot let go of, and it gets us into problems. That's Packard's entire storyline. And so how better to represent that than through the Iwi? The Iwi are something for humanity to aspire to. They are a perfect utopia, not only living in harmony with themselves, but with nature. They don't desire to conquer nature. That is a big difference between the Iwi and humanity. The Iwi are content with their place in the world, and they do not desire to conquer nature. And much like Hank Marlowe and Gunpei Akari, two people from different nationalities brought together, put under these extreme circumstances, and finding peace with one another despite being enemy, the Iwi were supposed to represent people from all different places all over the South Pacific, brought together into a peaceful utopian society. They were supposed to be shipwrecked peoples from Vietnam and the Philippines and wherever else. Technically, they're all played by Vietnamese actors, but they were supposed to represent different Asian cultures, different people brought together under these harsh circumstances, finding peace and utopia together. That was originally going to be a lot more overt in Kong Skull Island with some of the other Iwi villages we would visit, as there were supposed to be other villages with a little different cultures and nationalities. That wasn't ultimately brought into the film for budgetary and timing and plot reasons, but we have officially destroyed that thematic thread in Kong Skull Island by introducing the idea that actually the Iwi are Hollow Earth people and they traveled to Skull Island, which is something that was first brought up in the Godzilla vs. Kong novelization, a ridiculous plot thread that was supposed to be maybe touched upon in that movie. Who knows? Question mark? I don't know. But the idea that the Iwi started out living in Hollow Earth and then they found their way to Skull Island, and the Skull Island Iwi were basically defected Iwi from Hollow Earth, it destroys the original intention of the Iwi completely outright. Gia activates this water spout and it leads them to a bioorganic wall where they find a hidden realm on the other side. It is a kingdom in the distance. It's built around these enormous crystal pyramids. We then get one of my favorite little moments. It's this flock of warbats flying through the air. One of them eats this little animal. It's great. I love that moment with the warbats flying around in that flock, acting like animals. We get a great cutaway to the Hellhawks eating these little caterpillars out of the ground. Again, treating these guys as animals, not as cartoon characters, which is what a lot of the rest of the movie treats them as. I like that a lot. I don't know why it's such a iconic cutaway for me, but I really like the warbat flock. Suko then leads Kong to a lake where he's attacked by this giant snake titan, this drowned viper, which has a really cool design. It looks sick. Kong is attacked by it. He does manage to kill it, and he cuts off its head. He then catches up to Suko, who's retreating into the woods, who tried to get Kong killed and then run away, but Kong catches back up to him and is like, dude, you're not getting away that easy. And so they head off together. Kong tells Suko, follow me, I'm done with you. And they head up to this mountain where there's this beautiful sunset shot. This is one of those instances where it's like, how is there sunset in Hollow Earth? I don't know. I don't care. It's beautiful. Kong and Suko sit together and they bond finally as they eat the viper together. It's a great moment. I love it. So much nonverbal communicating here. So much nonverbal storytelling. It's just fantastic. Up on the surface, Godzilla arrives at Tiamat's lair, attacking it and killing her as she shows up, literally just wondering what's going on. She roars, not even recognizing that Godzilla's the one who's here. She just roars in a panic. Godzilla roars at her and he charges her first, frame by frame at bitches. Godzilla's the one in the wrong here. She responds by trying to defend herself and Godzilla annihilates her, killing her with the kiss of death after a very brief but highly entertaining fight. Tiamat really steals the show with her vibrant pink colors. She's fantastic. She moves in a really cool way. I really like it. Do not need the repeat of the kiss of death, and it is very unsympathetic of Godzilla to kill her, but that is what happens. Meanwhile, the gang gang is captured in Hollow Earth by the Iwi, calling back to Kong Skull Island, and they're brought to the temple of the Iwi. The Iwi kingdom is filled with these crystals. It's so cool. The crystal pyramids, the aesthetic of it, the weapons as well. They've got these crystal staves. They're awesome. It is so dope. I love the visuals of it. So cool. Gia can actually feel the Iwi's thoughts, and we find out that they're telepathic and that they worship at the altar of Mothra. Now, this is something that only dawned on me on this viewing, but these are the Hautua. In fact, I would have been way more excited and just downright ecstatic if they were called the Hautua and not the Iwi, and we found out they were a culture like the Iwi. Not Iwi, but similar. That would have been amazing. What a cool callback to Godzilla the Planet Eater that would have been. Would have been a real deep cut, considering that it's not one of the more beloved Godzilla movies, but it would have been a more recent one, so more people would have been able to pick up on it. Super cool Easter egg, considering they're both subterranean peoples living under the earth who worship Mothra and are telepathic. What a cool connection you could have drawn right there. They are the same type of people. I know, like, people like to joke around that they're similar to the Ceetopians. They're not at all like the Ceetopians. They are almost identical to the Hautua, except we never find out that they have some sort of insect DNA. You know, they're not producing any like glowing misty pollen. They're just Iwi of the Hollow Earth, but damn it, I wish they were the Hautua. They then spot all of these undocumented portals to the surface, which means that portals can exist on one end and not be opened on the other until something enters it, kind of Pacific Rim style. The Queen Iwi comes out, and she drifts with Gia Pacific Rim style, learning of her memories and finding out she's from Skull Island. She then takes them inside of the Crystal Pyramid, where they find this enormous monster battle gong. This is apparently what the Iwi keep ringing in order to send out their telepathic signals. Meanwhile, Suko leads Kong to a volcanic area surrounded by mega titan bones, including one giant serpent that they cross like a bridge. It's pretty cool. The Iwi take the gang into this prophecy room. I've already discussed at length how I don't like this scene, so let me just breeze through it. Ilene learns that Hollow Earth and the surface used to coexist. The titans were the guardians of nature, and the great apes the protectors of humanity. But the evil ape, Skar King, wanted to conquer the surface. He led a faction, a tribe, into war with Godzilla. The war nearly killed Godzilla, but he managed to imprison the apes in a fiery realm, which I am a little confused about because the subterranean realm is not all fiery. Most of it's very beautiful. It's just that one area. So I'm a little confused where Godzilla literally trapped them. Did he trap them in the volcano when they've been able to escape, but have never made it out of the subterranean realm? Or did he trap them in the subterranean realm and they just chose to live in the volcano? I don't know. I would actually think that he probably trapped them in the volcano. They have gotten out, but have never found their way back out of the subterranean realm. That's more likely what I think happened. Suko takes Kong to the Ape Kingdom, where he sees hundreds of great apes, which are technically not the same species as Kong's, but they are obviously a very, very similar species. Hundreds of them living in this volcanic pit doing slave things. They're moving around these giant rocks. I am not sure what they're doing. Are they digging, looking for a surface portal? Are they trying to dig to the surface? Or are they just doing slave activities just because? I could not tell you what they're doing. I do not know. Kong, however, is outraged and upset, as you'd expect he would be. I love that. I love that he immediately sees this and is like, I gotta step in and figure out what's going on here. This cannot be. Most of the apes are really malnourished, but even the strong ones are really tiny and are nothing compared to Kong himself. I really like that as well, how big Kong appears compared to them. Kong defends this weaker ape who's being pushed around by one of the red striped guards. I really like that moment as well. And One Eye gets all upset, warning Skar King that Kong's here, and Skar King's sitting in his throne room looking awesome. What a cool reveal scene. This whole scene, fantastic. I love this whole thing. Skar King comes out. He's got this amazing swagger. Love the way he swings out. Love the way he stands there with his head tilted back all cocky. Love the way he jumps down and starts to assess Kong before laughing at his metal tooth. He puts on this real show, and you get an immediate sense of Skar King's personality and the showmanship of him, and in some ways the charisma of him. I love it. I really love this character. He then directs his anger at Suko for bringing Kong here. Suko's all freaked out, so his caretaker steps in. We find out through a very quick interaction earlier, again, fantastic nonverbal storytelling, that Suko has been looked after this other ape. So Suko's caretaker steps in, and Skar King immediately kills him, kicking him into the lava. We kind of figure that might be why they live near the lava, so that Skar King can execute people like that. Kong, though, he's not having any of that, and so he attacks Skar King, and this very fast battle breaks out. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe how quick this combat combat is. It's such a cool fight. I really love it, but man, I would have liked for it to go on longer. Just like I said in the GVK review, the combat in this movie feels very brief. We're really far into the movie and we're only just now introducing Skar King, and he's not going to have a ton else to do before the final battle. So very little screen time for our main antagonist, and it's a shame because he's so compelling. I really like him. I wish we could have gotten more of him. Anyways, this big fight breaks out. It's pretty cool, and Kong is really slow to adjust to Skar King's rapid fighting style and quick movements. Like, he's able to flip and dodge Kong's attacks, and Kong's mostly getting damaged by the whip slash, which he hasn't figured out how that thing works yet. It would be the first time he's ever seen anything like this, so it makes sense that Skar King's able to gain the upper hand, eventually jumping over, wrapping the thing around Kong's neck, starting to choke him. But as brought up by the VFX artists who worked on this sequence, the Weta VFX artists who do an amazing job here, Kong is the stronger fighter. He is the one who is going to win this fight. It's just that he is not able to adapt to the fighting style as fast. He's not able to get his bearings yet because he's never fought an opponent like this yet. He's obviously fought opponents very quick before, like the Skullcrawler, and he struggled with that as well. He struggles with the fast ones because Kong is very slow in his attacks, which is funny because he's really quick compared to someone like Godzilla, but his attacks pack an enormous punch, and Kong does overpower Skar King, grabbing him and slamming him around here, causing Skar King to, in a very cocky way, but also in a coward's way, back out of the fight by summoning his ultimate weapon, this enormous ice titan Shimo. Shimo is revealed. She comes out of this volcanic prison she was stuck within, and using this magic crystal, Skar King controls her and gets her to attack Kong, freezing his right arm in the process. It didn't dawn on me until this viewing that Kong uses the axe to block the ice breath, but it freezes his arm. The reason he stands there holding it instead of like dodging and jumping away is probably because he's used to the fact that the axe charges on beam attacks like this. Obviously, it charged off of Godzilla's atomic energy, so once again, Kong needs to learn his opponents before he can fight them properly. He winds up losing the axe in the process and retreats here with Suko's help. The Red Stripes chase after Kong. It's a very energetic fight scene. It's very engaging. I really like it. And then we cut back to stupid plot where we learn from the prophecy here. Ilene learns that Shimo is the Titan here and Skar King's got power over her. She's apparently the one that caused the last ice age. And she figures out that Kong's found Skar King and that that's what the Iwi are warning Godzilla about. That's also why Godzilla's changing. She also finds through the Iwi prophecy that it states, at the end of the world, an Iwi from Skull Island will awaken Mothra, the Iwi's defender, to help. I don't even need to get into why I don't like that scene. I've done it in other videos. It's not a compelling prophecy. It's not compelling like the one from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, mostly because it's just telling you what we already know and what is literally about to happen. There's no mystery to it. Kong uses some awesome traps to fight the Red Stripes in a very clever way. It's very cool. I love it. But it doesn't work in full. He's eventually cornered, and One Eye avoids his next trap, meaning he's going to have to fist this one, and he's weakened. His arm is completely ruined. And it's a good thing that he doesn't have to, because Suko triggers the trap anyways, causing it to crash on all of the apes except One Eye. Very cool scene. Great Suko hero moment. And then Suko and Kong head out for help. Meanwhile, Godzilla absorbs all of Tiamat's energy stockpile. I don't know how he froze himself, but he somehow did. Gia gets along with the Iwi children very well, and Ilene accepts that Gia might want to leave her for the Iwi, and she has to come to terms with that. Bernie then learns that the Iwi are able to move the pyramids, manipulating gravity to run their city. Makes absolutely no sense. It's also like, you don't even do a good job selling it, because it's not like we're moving like there's moon gravity, which there would be if the Iwi can pick up those enormous stone giant slabs, but whatever, the movie does not commit to some of these ideas very well. Trapper and Bernie have this great moment together where Trapper asks him, like, what are you gonna do? Expose the Iwi tribe and get it destroyed? Like, is it worth that? People know that you're a hero, people that matter, like me, and I really like their bond. I love their friendship. They're great characters. Kong arrives at the Iwi kingdom after somehow sensing Gia. I guess that's a new power of his. They could have said he smelled her, but he senses her like she's a Titan. Maybe because she's got the telepathy? I don't know. She's never used telepathy before. She doesn't communicate with him in this very scene. He collapses, and the humans find out about Suko, who also gets very nervous about them, which I think is very cute, and then Suko runs off. Kong tells Gia that he lost home, and the only instance he uses ASL in this movie, but a very powerful one, calling back to the ending of Godzilla vs. Kong. Trapper then discovers that his arm has intense frostbite, and he'll lose it, or Ilene says he won't have an arm. He'll only have one arm. I don't know if he'll literally lose the arm or if he just won't be able to use it very well from this point forward, but the arm is damaged, and so Trapper needs to get Project Powerhouse to help. In augmentation that they made for Kong, we get this cheesy little montage where we just get a straight up used asset from Pacific Rim. Meanwhile, One Eye alerts Skar King about the Iwi Kingdom and the surface portals and the wall that protects them, and so Skar King sets out with an army and Shimo. This causes Godzilla, or at least this is when Godzilla finishes evolving and emerges in his newly upgraded form, and I'm not a fan of the design. I'm definitely not a fan of the roar of the design, and I'm definitely not a fan of the revamped annoying theme for Godzilla. The design is okay, I guess. It's similar to the MonsterVerse Godzilla, which I think is a very cool design, but it basically takes a lot of the things I love about it and changes them in ways that I don't love. Don't love the new directions the spines are pointing. I kind of like the new bigger shape of them, but don't love the new spines overall. Really don't love the break-in spines on the back where there's like a giant spine gap. Don't love Godzilla's new proportioning. I think some of the enhancements are cool. Like, I really like the blades on the elbows, but he doesn't use them ever. Don't like the Thagamizers. Just overall, not a fan of Godzilla Evolved, and I do not care for the pink. I don't think it's very Godzilla at all. I have seen this design, obviously, like in Fortnite with the blue coloration, and I do think it does a lot towards making it feel more Godzilla core, and towards me liking it more. If this design was blue, I might have liked it more. And it's not to do with it being pink necessarily, as much as it's a lot of change all at once, and not for the better in my opinion. Trapper and the Heave kind of teleport all around throughout this sequence, but Trapper does make his way back to Outpost 1 in no time. No time has passed at all, apparently. He grabs the prototype Beast Glove and brings it back to Kong, attaching it to his arm. It's a very cool sequence with a very fun needle drop, and it winds up healing him up. It injects him with this healing serum that allows him to heal from the frostbite and upgrades his arm with now a super punch. He's got this enormous upgraded punching strength and an electrical charge, calling back to King Kong versus Godzilla. I do not like the Beast Glove, but you've already heard me say that. I just don't think it fits the King Kong character. I think it strays too far away from what makes him special, and it doubles down on the fact that these movies do not know how to play to the strengths and weaknesses of these characters, but rather to play for the more flashy, gimmicky things. And I don't need a flashy gimmick in my movie. I'm not here to buy Beast Glove toys. I'm here for the story and the character, and this services neither. Suko warns Kong that Skar King's army is coming. Gia tells Kong to go get help, and so, wasting no time, Kong immediately jumps through a portal to the surface to get Godzilla. Kong emerges in Cairo, Egypt with this awesome music playing over. It's a cool Egyptian remix of Kong's theme, and then he battle roars. Godzilla respawns hundreds of miles away in Gibraltar, where he leaps into the ocean off the Gibraltar mountain. It's a very comical scene, and he heads out after Kong. Down in Hollow Earth, Gia climbs the thousands of feet tall pyramids, climbing up them, and then raises a hand in the air, and it somehow materializes Mothra out of thin air. I don't know why anyone else could have done that, but what a terrible introduction for Mothra here. Mothra takes off towards the surface after spawning into the movie. And then the Iwi plan to use the anti-gravity fields to slow Skar King down by causing the two pyramids to collide, which somehow disrupts gravity in the Hollow Earth. I don't know. Meanwhile, Trapper takes a heave to get help. Godzilla then kills hundreds of people as he heads for Kong. Once again, Godzilla's not the protector of humanity. He's the protector of nothing. He does what the plot asks him to. He destroys these bridges, killing people, then he tramples his way through Cairo on his way to Kong. Kong tries to reason with Godzilla and warn him that he needs him in the portal, but Godzilla's got no brain cells whenever Kong's around. Godzilla goes full-blown stupid mode and attacks Kong, kicking off what is the most exciting scene in the movie for me. I think it's a super fun fight, but it's also a fight filled with a bunch of problems. This scene sums up my thoughts on this movie overall as a whole. It's very fun, very entertaining. I have fun watching it, and I can laugh at it because there's a lot of comedy to it, but I find it overall over the top and to be a disservice to the overall story of the MonsterVerse, in that this fight does not need to happen. It walks back the conflict of Godzilla vs. Kong, having them fight before a team-up, retreading ground we've already covered in the last movie, and it's undone within 3 minutes, because 3 minutes from now, the fight's already over, and it ends the same GD way as Godzilla vs. Kong, with Godzilla stomping on Kong's chest and then not killing him. The same way Godzilla vs. Kong goes. Godzilla and Kong fight. Godzilla stomps on Kong's chest, becoming the victor of the battle, roaring in his face, and then they team up and fight a bigger bad guy. I do not need them to retread this. It destroys any sort of thematic way Godzilla vs. Kong could have had, but it is entertaining and it is fun. I love seeing Godzilla and Kong fight as enemies. I wish we could get more of it. I think it's awesome. I'm down for it in the future. Not in the future of the MonsterVerse, because again, move the characters forward, progress the story, please. But that does not take away from the entertainment factor of it. It's a fight filled with wrestling moves. I don't love that it basically strips both of these monsters, Godzilla and Kong, down to wrestlers, especially with having Godzilla be the one to do the suplex on Kong. Like, a human-styled wrestling move would be something you'd expect a human-like monster, Kong, to do, but instead it's Godzilla. Why Godzilla does fighting moves like that, I don't know. But it reminds me of then the Showa series when Godzilla starts to fight like a boxer and basically loses all tethers to the original Godzilla and the way Godzilla moved and fought. We're so far from Hiro Nakajima by that point. Like, by the time Godzilla's fighting like a boxer, it just does not feel like Godzilla anymore. And the same here. They're fighting like wrestlers, not Godzilla and Kong. I believe very firmly that every action should service the character. If you're having a fight scene, the characters should fight in ways that service their characters. That's what happens during the Kong and Skar King fight. That's why it's so fantastic. They're both fighting in ways that make sense for them and in ways that service their characters while revealing something about each other in the process. Here, Godzilla and Kong fight like wrestlers because they fight like wrestlers. The same way that at the end of Godzilla vs. Kong, they fight like wrestlers because they fight like wrestlers. Long gone are the days of Jordan Vogt-Roberts putting intense thought into the fight choreography of Kong Skull Island to make sure that Kong fights in ways that only Kong could, in ways that feel both dynamic and monstrous, in ways that feel like they have human-esque qualities without feeling too human in a way where a monster couldn't have learned that move on its own. Long gone are those days. Kong's fighting style has changed dramatically, and now he's just a big guy, just like Godzilla, just fighting like a big guy. It is a great fight scene. It is undeniably entertaining. It's awesome. It's action-packed. It's cool. I love the fight moves. It's got great humor. It's got great beats. I love when Kong's just had it and he cannot take it anymore. He crashes out. He unleashes on Godzilla, knocking him out with the beast glove, and then he starts to drag Godzilla to the portal. He is stopped by the atomic breath. Godzilla gains the upper hand, stomping Kong into the ground, and then in a move that I thought should have been used in Godzilla vs. Kong is stopped by Mothra. Just like in Ghidorah the three-headed monster, Mothra appears to put an end to the petty monster conflict to get their eyes on the bigger prize, and Gia appears standing on a sphinx as Godzilla realizes that, yep, his ego got the best of him, and he joins Team Kong, hopefully for the last time. Adam Wingard has stated that, yeah, that is exactly what happened. Godzilla kind of knows that he's not supposed to be fighting Kong here, but he can't let go of his ego, and so that's why he's doing it. And it's when Mothra shows up that he's like, yeah, I know, I got bigger things to worry about, which again makes Godzilla feel like an idiot that he's willing to abandon his mission to protect nature's balance, especially when he already knows Kong's a guy who will team up with him. And do not give me the whole Godzilla's so angry and overstimulated that he doesn't know who he's fighting. The whole point is that he goes extra hard because it's Kong of all people. That's the whole point. And the whole point is that Godzilla lets go of that when he sees Mothra because he realizes, yeah, I know, there's bigger things to worry about. For the first time in history, though, King Kong, Godzilla, and Mothra share the screen in this epic moment where they roar together. It is awesome. It is finally time. Kong and Mothra were supposed to cross over all the way back in 1966. It's finally time for those two characters to share the screen together. It's so cool. I love it. Mothra being a sort of remake of the original 1933 King Kong, but with a kind of gendered flip on it, and then having these two characters finally share the screen. It's so cool. I really love it. Skar King arrives in Hollow Earth. He arrives at the Iwi Kingdom. Using Shimo, he is able to stop the crystals from colliding, causing the anti-gravity shockwave to be delayed. Trapper then shows up, unleashing an attack on Skar King's army using the verticenes, all hyped up and charged up with electricity, distracting them long enough for Godzilla and Kong to blast through the Hollow Earth portal, taking lethal fall damage upon impact. Man, do they collide with the ground hard here. They then erupt through the earth and charge into battle, finally united as a team towards the last 20 minutes of the movie. I think we're actually less than 20 minutes here. They finally charge into battle as a team, leaping into war against Skar King and Shimo. It's epic. The anti-gravity shockwave hits and they're thrown into zero gravity. It is a very unique fight for these monsters. Not only are they fighting in Hollow Earth, but now they're fighting in anti-gravity. One thing Adam Wingard's great about is taking the monsters and putting them in fight scenarios we've never seen them in before. In the last movie, it was putting Kong on the boats in the middle of the ocean, and here it's throwing them into anti-gravity. It's very cool. Godzilla shockingly dominates in the air, using it like he's swimming around, attacking Shimo and taking out some red stripes in the process. It's a very cool moment. Mothra actually gets my favorite moments here as she swings in, saving the heave from red stripes by webbing apes to these rocks. Kong and Skar King start to fight, with Suko helping get the red stripes off Kong's back in a great little team up moment as well, before getting One Eye's attention, and so Suko's got bigger problems to deal with. Mothra helps Godzilla out, stopping Shimo from freezing Godzilla long enough for him to atomic pulse his way out of her ice breath, and then the anti-gravity runs out and all four main titans plummet down into a hollow earth portal together. Meanwhile, Mothra saves the heave from crashing into the ground. Suko is able to kill One Eye, kicking him off a cliff, having him take lethal fall damage, so I guess the great apes can take fall damage. As Kong loses his freaking axe again, he just got it back seconds ago, but he loses it as he for some reason doesn't want to fall into the Hollow Earth portal despite literally chasing Skar King into the portal. Shimo and Skar King arrive on the surface just a little before they land in Rio and launch an all-out attack, with Shimo blasting Rio with her frost breath and Skar King laughing at the humans as he does so. Kong then cuts this short with a sucker punch as he makes it to the surface, knocking Skar King's tooth out. Godzilla arrives and then focuses most of his firepower on Shimo, and the final battle is officially underway. Godzilla is tossed all around by Shimo. You really get a sense that, like, man, does she have some power, just throwing Godzilla through the air. And you also get the sense that she's the only real threat, as Kong, one-on-one, is still dominating Skar King in battle, kicking him out of the air and really putting the smackdown on him, and it's only whenever Shimo intervenes that Kong loses the upper hand, getting thrown around by her. In Hollow Earth, Suko recovers the axe and heads towards the surface to help out. Shimo and Kong wind up in this ridiculously long stalemate where Shimo freezes Kong's arm, and we find out that the Beast Glove can do more than just pack a punch. It can also, somehow, block Shimo's ice breath. Now, earlier in the movie, we were supposed to find out that Kong's Beast Glove can actually deflect Godzilla's atomic breath as well. That was supposed to be part of the point of it, was that the Beast Glove was specifically made to be able to deflect Godzilla's atomic breath, and so therefore, maybe it would have made a little more sense that it could also repel Shimo's ice beam, but somehow it cannot freeze, and so they're just stuck in this stalemate. Godzilla supercharges, looks fantastic doing so. He looks so cool, and then he chases Skar King around with the atomic breath, kind of calling back to Godzilla vs. Kong, catching him on the back, burning up his back a little bit, but somehow the supercharged breath doesn't really do much. Godzilla is, however, able to catch the whip slash and destroy it, causing an all-out rush for the crystal. Just as Skar King's about to regain control of it, which would allow him once again to control Shimo, Suko appears, destroying it with somehow the axe is charged up. Godzilla's axe is charged up, but anyways, Suko destroys the crystal with it. It explodes. This big shockwave happens, and then Kong punches Skar King out as Skar King starts to attack Suko. I love it. Kong grabs Skar King, swings him around, throws him. Godzilla then baseball bats him with his tail in their only combo move together. Technically speaking, they kind of combo move earlier as Kong jumps on Godzilla and rides him into battle, but that's not necessarily a combat move. That is a team-up move, but it's not a combo move. And sometimes Godzilla will aid in assist to Kong, getting Shimo off Kong's back for a moment, but this is their only combo move in the movie. Even in Godzilla vs. Kong, they put the double smackdown on Mechagodzilla, pushing him through the building and then climbing on him together. Like, there was more combo moves there, plus the atomic breath charging up the axe, than there is in this movie, which was marketed as their big team up. Anyways, Kong catches Skar King. Shimo then freezes him after Godzilla tells her, "Do it or I'm gonna kill you." And then Kong shatters Skar King to pieces, killing him. Godzilla ends the conflict by shooting his atomic breath into the sky, which somehow he shoots a storm out of the sky, shoots clouds out of the sky. I do not know how to explain that. But I like that for the first time ever, Shimo and Suko get to see the sunlight. It's a very beautiful moment. Godzilla and Kong finally acknowledge each other as equals and as partners, and they go their separate ways. Mothra returns Gia to her people, and Gia chooses to stay with her mother, Ilene, over the Iwi. It's a great scene. Mothra then repairs the Iwi protection wall. I guess she's the one that made that. I don't know how. And the gang celebrates with the Iwi. It kind of seems implied here that Trapper is the only one who's going to head to the surface. Ilene and Bernie and Gia will stay with the Iwi for a little while, and that apparently is stated outright in the novelization, which would actually make some sense considering those three characters are not returning for the next film, but Trapper is. Godzilla returns to sleep in the Colosseum, favoring that as his new home, while Kong frees the Ape Kingdom, liberating them alongside Suko and Shimo as heroes. I love that shot of Suko riding on Kong's shoulder, proud. I also love that shot where Kong hypes Suko up as the one who freed the apes. That's a great moment. It's also kind of like they're all buddies now because Kong's literally scratching Suko on the chin like she's his pet. He's adopted Shimo and he's also adopted Suko as the son of Kong. And Kong undeniably earns the title King Kong here. That is a plot thread he has repeated in all three movies by killing the dominant powerhouse on Skull Island and Kong's Skull Island, that being the Skull Devil, which killed his parents. Kong earns the title of King Kong. That was Jordan Vogt Roberts' original arc for the character. He earns the title of King Kong, which is why the final track on that album is called King Kong. Godzilla vs. Kong, Adam Wingard said Kong earned the title of king when he sat atop the throne in Hollow Earth, officially accepting the ancestral title on behalf of his people, and then again re-solidifies it as king alongside Godzilla as the two of them team up to take down Mechagodzilla as equals. Once again, though, we retread that plot beat with Kong finally becoming King Kong of the apes, and so hopefully they'll just be able to call him that moving forward. Now, I know there's a misconception that there's like a legal problem in calling Kong King Kong. I believe you cannot use the title King Kong in a title. You can't use it on title or merchandise, but you can use the name in a movie. And that is where the film comes to an end. It's a pretty sweet ending. I love Day After Day playing over top of it. It's a great little scene. I'm going to break this one down in a little more detail than I did some of the others, just like I did with Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm going to have to give more context here to summarize my feelings on this film, because the human story is really mixed. The characters and their relationships are great. I love the core cast of this movie. I think they're all characterized really well, and I love their interpersonal dynamics. The Iwi lore, however, is downright bad and in some ways disrespectful to the themes of Kong Skull Island. The plot writing I also found to be truly downright bad. The prophecy is bad. The whole Mothra thing comes out of nowhere. Things are just kind of happening because they do. Characters teleport around. Trapper's able to get from one place to the heave even though they're miles apart in an instant. He's then able to teleport all around. Like, things just are happening. This is a movie where things happen because they do, and any search for answers leads to more questions than you originally had. I feel similar about the kaiju storyline. It's mixed. Godzilla is doubled down on his GVK persona, which is, in my opinion, not great. It is kind of weird because at times he feels a little King of the Monsters-esque, like when he fights Scylla, and at other times he feels very GVK-esque, like when he kills all the civilians in Cairo. Very different than when he accidentally causes a flood in Godzilla 2014, and very, very different than the supposed superhero role he takes on in Godzilla King of the Monsters. His power set I find to be downright bad as well. I don't love his backstory. I don't love the lore with him. I don't love how overpowered he is. I don't love how before he evolves, he's pulling out moves we've never seen before, and the evolved Godzilla is not my favorite design. As for Kong, the Kong Skull Island characterization, which I find infinitely more compelling for this character, is dead. It's officially dead and gone and buried. The Godzilla vs. Kong portrayal is the one seen in this movie, and I think it's pretty good. He's pretty good here. In fact, I would go as far as to say, if I can ignore how far Kong has come since Kong Skull Island, he's downright great in this movie. I love that he has now taken on a superhero-like persona. It's just things like the metal tooth, the toothache, and the beast glove that I do not like. As for the design, as I said earlier, he's stocky. I don't love the grayness of it. I would say overall it's okay. I love how much more muscular he was than he was in Godzilla vs. Kong, but on the whole, I do think that it's a step back from that design. I would have loved a merge of the two. Suko's characterization is great. I love the trauma with that character. I love the heroic redemption for that character. I love all of the characterization for him. I do not love the design. He looks ridiculous with those big googly eyes, and I think he has a downright really annoying sound design. The roar is so annoying, and all the little squeals he does I also find very annoying. He's not cute like they think he is. That's my big issue with him. The characterization, very cute. Everything else, they're trying too hard. They're trying too hard with him. Skar King, fantastic. Amazing villain, great presence, love the fighting style, love how different he is from the other characters, love all of it. The backstory's cliche, whatever, who cares? We've already characterized these monsters to the point of being cartoon characters rather than monsters, so with that in mind, Skar King's fantastic. I love the great apes as well. There's some real standouts. One Eye's great, Boots is great. There's some real standouts there. Shimo is really, really underwhelming. I find Shimo's design to be really great. I find Shimo's powers to be really great. I find Shimo's scale to be really great. I find Shimo's potential to be really amazing and pretty untapped. I find Shimo in this movie to be pretty lame, pretty underused, and also overhyped, just painfully overhyped. Mothra has a downright terrible introduction and backstory in this movie. It is my least favorite Mothra introduction and lore of the entire saga. There has never been a Mothra that I do not like the backstory for and introduction for and lore for more than this one. That said, once she's on screen, she is my favorite in the movie. She has fantastic characterization. You really get a sense of her personality. She's just like the Mothra of the past. Very heroic, very caring, very nurturing, but also, like, impatient. She does not have patience for Godzilla's BS, and I really appreciate that they brought that characterization back to her. I don't love the new roars, but I love the new design. It's a take on the Michael Dougherty 2019 design, although it's bringing back in more of the fluff of the original Mothra and more of the colorscape of the Showa Mothra and the Toho characterization for that and the Toho aesthetic for her. I think she's great. She is truly awesome here. Overall, the kaiju storyline I find to be pretty good, if overly explained. I think that sometimes they overly explain things. I think the backstories are all pretty bad. I hate the idea that Godzilla's already dealt with this conflict and won by himself in the past. It destroys the stakes, and I do not think it's needed. I think it's far more compelling if this is a brand new thread. And in fact, I find that there's so many tiny changes that could have been made for the massive benefit of this movie. And so that's what I'll say. Kaiju story is pretty good. Godzilla's not my fave in this movie. I find him to be a far stray from the King of the Monsters Godzilla, who's the one that I prefer in the MonsterVerse, or even the 2014 Godzilla, but the Kong stuff is pretty solid here, and I do like a lot of it. The VFX and visuals are great, but sometimes slightly off. Like, sometimes they're truly amazing. Sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, the VFX are a little off. In particular, whenever we're on the surface world, I think the VFX are lacking heavily. As far as the visuals go, at times, again, very good, very great. There's some amazing cinematography here, but there's also times where I find it really overly cluttered, overly chaotic, poorly choreographed, and really dull. Like, the battle in Rio has this really bland, dull, bluish gray color scape. I do not know what happened there, but there's a lot of times in this movie where I think the vibrance of it should have been brought way up. The music in this movie has its moments. There are some really great moments, especially some of the, like, Monarch Bernie themes that that's great. That plays when Bernie's introduced. That plays over the credits. I really like it. But much like the plot, I find that it never gives us a break. It's just often loud and annoying. In fact, I have a playlist of some of my favorite gentle music in the MonsterVerse that I sometimes listen to sleep. It's like a calming playlist from the MonsterVerse, and there's nothing in this whole movie that can go on it. Friendship is the closest song that could. I believe that's what it's called, but a lot of the time, it'll start soft, and then it'll ramp up into this obnoxiously loud portion. Like, the song that plays when they discover the Iwi temple remains is wonderful, and then it just gets loud and energetic when it doesn't need to. That's how I feel about this whole movie. Nothing is allowed to breathe because they're trying to keep it moving at such a lightning speed that it's overwhelming, which is my next point. Pacing. Really overwhelming, really chaotic. A lot of this movie is edited in what feels like montage format. Oh, one last note on that soundtrack. Holy crap, does Godzilla's theme annoy the heck out of me in this movie. I think it sounds downright awful, and, you know, sometimes it's kicking on and there's like this more heroic Avengers-y theme version of Godzilla's theme, and I find it to be really, really bad. I don't like it. I just find that the new Godzilla theme is really does not live up to the past. Really, especially does not live up to the original Godzilla themes. Like I've always said, if you're going to do something different, do something really different. The vibe of this movie, pretty good. I really like the friendliness of it. I like the friendliness of it. I love Kong. I love Suko. I love their friendship. I love Mothra. I love her persona, her kindness. I love the characters, especially Trapper and Bernie. Trapper and Bernie do so much for this movie. It's a movie with a lot of really kind-hearted moments, and it is a movie that I think the world needs, and that we need more upbeat, light-hearted films. We need more escapism, and this movie is wonderful escapism. I just don't think escapism needs to come at the sacrifice of story and character. And I do think that this film overall lacks with both story and character in big ways, as I've already discussed. So the vibe is pretty good. I think that there's a lot of room for improvement, but I do find this to be a fantastic adventure action film. And I do think that it is a fantastic children's film. Like, this would be an all-timer if I saw this as a kid. The constant monster action is really wonderful and pleasing for children, and I really stand by it. Overall, I think this movie is okay. I want so desperately to love this movie like everybody else. It makes me downright sad and a little depressed that I cannot share in people's enjoyment of it. I feel like such a freaking bitter old man talking about this movie. Like, I can't get over my gripes of it. I cannot enjoy it the way that other people do. I feel like this movie left me behind in the dust, and I just can't enjoy it the way I'm desperate to enjoy it. Every time I watch this movie, I find myself disappointed with it. Every time I watch this movie, I find myself thinking about the story problems and the missed potential of it. It really sticks out to me in this film in a way that downright makes me sad. Like, I feel like I just didn't click with it like I was so hoping to. As I explained in my GVK review, which I think is the perfect summation of my opinion on the MonsterVerse, Godzilla 2014 felt like an appetizer that I was ready for a bigger meal afterward. Like, it got me really happy. I loved the flavor, but I wanted more, and that's what I got with Kong Skull Island and Godzilla King of the Monsters. A fantastic main meal. It was a great main meal, and I was so ready and excited for my dessert, and Godzilla vs. Kong was the dessert, and I accepted it at the time despite the fact that I knew it wasn't good for me. And then I got a second dessert when I was ready for a healthy meal, like either a full-blown meal or another appetizer, and I was fed an even richer dessert that made me sick to my stomach and amplifies all my issues with the previous dessert, where now I'm realizing that that one started me out with the bellyache, and now this one's only made it worse. That's the best metaphor I can explain, because this movie is too much of it. It's too much. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing, and this movie is too much of it for me. I want so badly to enjoy this film, and I think in time I might be able to learn to enjoy it in a big way, but that really, I do believe, will be determined on where the MonsterVerse goes next. If we continue to double down on these things and head down this path, I think I'm gonna fall out of love with the MonsterVerse in a very depressing way. If we make a course correction, we rein in the story and characterization to make it more consistent and thoughtful, and especially work on the world building, I think I could fall in love with this film as a very special dessert, you know? But I don't want dessert right now. I'm ready for something else. And that's why I'm going to give Godzilla Kong the New Empire a 6.5 out of 10. One of the lower scores I've given a Godzilla film in a very long time. It's the lowest score I've given a MonsterVerse movie, and it is my least favorite MonsterVerse film by a pretty significant margin. And that does sadden me to say, like, big time. But that's where I feel about Godzilla Kong the New Empire. I would love to know what you guys think. I know this channel is very divisive. Some people love this movie. Some people do not love this movie. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. Comment down below and let me know. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for all your support on the Patreon. It is through the support of patrons on the Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. One last thank you for 101,954 subs. That sub goal is what relaunched Godzilla-Thon in the first place. Thank you so much for that. It means the world to me. And thank you for sticking with the return of Godzilla-Thon and Kong-a-Thon. I really, really appreciate it. I am excited for more Godzilla films in the future so that we can continue to do these. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man, out.